Of course, we need the medias, we need the theologians, we need all people with some grasp in the cultural life of the world. It's a big issue for the world with no institution to take care of that. I am not simplifying the problem by saying that, but we must know that this is behind many of our problems. I would add one thing, particularly as I remember pretty well the discussions around the year 2000. What were we discussing about around the year 2000? Two issues. One, financial architecture, to consolidate it and trying to avoid instances of disruption, and debt reduction for the poorest countries. It was the time of Jubilee 2000. And I remember pretty well, we had these two issues. But the pressure of all of us, well, because we want justice and we care about the poorest, to solve the debt crisis was so overwhelming. And politicians wanted to respond to the NGOs of the earth, no on that. So they forgot the other question of architecture. So we must be very careful in our work of, let's say, lobbying the leaders of the world to have the proper agenda. Possibly, if we had a more balanced agenda as NGOs, putting also the finger that with no architecture for regulating the financial world, we are going to a catastrophe which will be paid by the poorest, who would have possibly contributed to avoid the present catastrophe.
Thank you. Well, Andre, you really kind of sparked off a very interesting discussion here. And well, no, I mean, basically I'm looking at the title of the, I'm the moderator, I'm supposed to be keeping us on track here, and I'm looking at the title of the session, and it is Financing Urgent Adaptation. And then actually what we're saying, that you need a stable financing system, before you even get to the questions we've been talking about. And I think we're saying increasingly a stable and predictable financial system needs to have ethical underpinnings, and that we need a much clearer sense of what those ethical underpinnings should be. And Michel, you're saying we need to take, in a way, look at personal behavior. I'm not sure if we start with the bankers, though, of all the people to, of all the places to start. But anyway, look, I have a responsibility to let the other people who put their hands up speak, and then I'm going to come back to those. The lady behind you, sir, has been very patient.
Thank you very much. I think that maybe if we have to move from a culture of greed, then on climate change, I would say that we must not also engage ourselves in a culture of insensitivity. Because, we have recognized the power of the media, in climate change issues. But I would like to say that the media itself is very expensive. This morning we talked about how do you reach the rural person, a person maybe in Mali, Burkina Faso, a far village, who cannot afford a battery. How do you pass on information on climate change, sending early signs, warnings, knowing very well that human beings are very reluctant to change? So I think that media issues must be made accessible. And when we have fund, we come to FAO. In my country, Ghana, we have the Africa Regional Office of FAO in Accra. But I can tell you that all these funds within the FAO is, not readily accessible to farmers. Farmers are suffering from migration, from herdsmen, from Mali, Niger, who are entering the country, destroying farms, and sometimes in excessive cases, raping women and children. And, funds are not accessible to help them, stabilize them socially. We know that these funds are there, but then how do you reach the fund for the benefit of the, of the deprived society? And I agree with him. that we'll get to Copenhagen, then we'll find a few privileged inside the room, negotiating. And then the majority underprivileged outside, only waiting for bread to drop on our plate. Thank you.
Could you identify yourself?
I'm Sherry Aite, Minister of Environment, Science and Technology, Ghana.
Wonderful. Thank you. Madam, I think you were next.
Thank you very much.
Could you identify yourself?
I'm Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwa, Minister of Environment and Tourism from Namibia.
Thank you.
Initially, my comment was on the issue of the business model in the private sector, but after the contribution on the media, I just want to share the information on that, but then I'll come to my question on the business. Having realized the importance of the media when it comes to any information sharing, and we realized last year the Ministry of Environment and Tourism had embarked upon training the media practitioner on environmental issues. And as a result of that training, which was conducted by the ministry, I was happy on the 17th of June when I had to launch a media network on environment and climate change. So I think whoever would want to link up with this particular network in Namibia will appreciate it. We do so because we realize the media can really play a big role in disseminating information, especially the electronic media, because in Namibia you find 90% of the population have access to the radio. Television is something else, but the radio, that's where they even get their information. When is the pension payout? When is everything? They announce their funerals and everything on the radio. So it's a very important, and that's why we have to focus on the media. Having said that, I will come now to the issue of the discussion, which is financing agency for adaptation, and specifically on the issue of the business. As a footnote, we all agree that we are dealing with a world crisis in as far as climate change is concerned. The fortunate is that we all know the origin of this crisis, and because you know the origin, I believe one is in a better position if there is openness, there is honesty, there is a willingness, we'll be able to deal with the crisis. But as you were talking about the ethics, I think this is very, very important to bring it very clear in this discussion of climate change and how we can handle with it. On the finance, you talked about the OD and the additional resources that's needed. And that is what Africa has been saying over the years, that there is a need of additional resources. And unless we agree on that one, we are just going to make all this as a public exercise and nothing is going to happen, because definitely there's a need of additional resources. What we are now seeing happening, and that is where I want the panel to address or maybe to get their views. As we are talking about the need of additional resources, one is also seeing that the business is coming in. Of course, there might nothing wrong for the business to come in, but the ethical, which we have mentioned here, is very important. The business is coming in as entrepreneur, and you are finding proposals coming whereby some institutions, financial institutions, are being established, and then they are coming to the developing countries or to African countries, and then to offer that if you want us to get into this program, maybe either it's adaptation or it's a clean development mechanism, we are able to provide a loan, and such a loan, maybe the government can grant the loan, we'll put up green energy and all these things. But then when we look at it, we are seeing ourselves going into the vicious circle of debt. Because once you get such a loan, definitely you have to pay for it. And we know that Africa has been in this debt crisis and trying to get out.